Welcome everyone to our Book of Enoch Bible study. This is chapter 72 to 82. And in it, we talk about God's perfect 364-day calendar as described in the Book of Enoch. It's got 4 equal seasons of 91 days, 12 months of 30 days, plus these 4 intercalary days. It has exactly 52 weeks or Sabbaths. And we'll get a bit more into the detail later. So just in terms of a outline of this section of the Book of Enoch, this is actually considered the third Book of Enoch. So chapter 72 talks about the course of the sun, the 12 portals and gates for the sun, and we'll get into what portals and gates are in a second. Chapter 73 to 74 is the course of the moon, and we'll talk about the phases of the moon. Chapter 75 talks about the 4 intercalary days, so the days they add to their calendar, and it also talks about the courses of the stars. Chapter 76 to 77 talks about the portals for the 4 winds. It also talks about the 4 quarters of the earth and the description of the earth in Enoch's time. Chapter 78 to 79 talks about more on the moon and the sun and their phases and movement. And then chapter 80 to 82 kind of brings it all together. It talks about the parallels between the luminaries and mankind, those that are obedient, righteous, and follow God's order and command, versus those that are wayward and go their own way, the sinners. So before we get started, this section of the Book of Enoch is very technical. It gets into real depth and detail. Now, I felt it was important to keep this as one study. So the later chapters 80 to 82 about the obedient versus the sinners are very much thematically linked with chapters 72 to 79, the movements of the luminaries. So the usual Christopher Glynn narration that we've been having throughout the Book of Enoch will often only cover parts of chapters, while a lot of the technical parts will just be briefly summarized. For those wanting the full narration and text, you can see this link here for the Book of Enoch Part 3. And then if you just want the text in full detail, you can go to this website here. This is kind of what I've been using for the studies. Okay, all right. So I think with that said, just a little bit more here. Another important detail about the Book of Enoch is that it is written from a flat Earth perspective. The Earth is stationary, and the sun and moon move above it. This would be a bird's eye view. Actually, God's eye view, a higher than the birds. Just as the Bible says. So that's what the Bible says. The Bible is very clearly a flat Earth book, and that's the Book of Enoch as well. Now, even to a child, this truth that the earth is stationary and the sun and moon move above us, it's innately obvious. A child just knows that, believes that instinctively. The lie of a ball earth that revolves around the sun, which in turn revolves around a universe, has to be taught. So people are taught this lie and come to believe it. But the truth of how the world actually is innately obvious. It's not until you get taught out of it that you disbelieve it. And this is why we see the programming of globes in the kindergarten. You see the solar system diagrams in the schools, public schools. And then you see the so-called moon landing and things like that in the media, all this notion of space. It's just to constantly reinforce that lie. Now, if you're still a victim of this program, I'm going to suggest a couple of the old previous Bible studies before moving on, just to make it clear and that we can all be on the same page here. So there's a good Bible study we wrote called "The Love the Truth: Why the Moon Landing is a Lie," and that goes into detail of this hoax. In this picture here, you can actually see a picture of one of the astronauts, but in the reflection, they have a studio light, and that's where it was filmed in a studio. We have a Bible study about Revelation chapter 7a, and this is just some proofs of a flat Earth and Revelation 8b, which goes into detail about the stars. What are stars really? They're not these gas giants, millions and millions of light years away, but they actually represent angels. And the Bible talks about that all the time. So the luminaries, these stars, have a celestial form, but then when they come to Earth, they also have an earthly form. And it's a concept that's a little bit difficult to grasp, but these two things can sort of coexist at once. All videos are over at the BitChute channel, Truth Seeker 2028. All right, so one thing to understand before moving on is this concept of portals. Before we get into Book of Enoch, this is a little bit of a tricky thing. A lot of times we think of portals as like a doorway or a gateway. They're using older language here, and so for them, this has a little bit of a different meaning. So, a better way to think of portals, as described in the Book of Enoch, is more like gates, circuits, or lanes, just like you would have around a running track. So, in this particular running track, you can see six gates or six lanes or circuits, and it's just kind of how to think of the word portal. So, each of those portals represent a lane. Now, in the spring, and this will get more into detail in the Book of Enoch, but just as a quick overview, the sun starts in the fourth portal, and it starts close by the equator. And over a period of 30 days, it kind of goes in a spiral, kind of all the way around, 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 tighter and tighter and tighter. And it actually gets into the fifth lane after about 30 days. And then after that, another 30 days, it makes its way into the sixth portal or lane on the inside here in this case. And then that's really close here to this Tropic of Cancer, which is this inner circle. And then what it does, and that would be the summer solstice once it's kind of in the center. And then it starts working its way outward. It reverses its direction. So 30 days in six, 30 days in five, 30 days in four, 30 days in three, 30 days in two. And then back in the winter, 6 months later, it's close to the Tropic of Capricorn. And that would be in the winter solstice. So that's kind of how these lanes and circuits work. Here's just another quick explanation just to kind of really nail it down.
Here, as you can see the flat Earth map, you guys are familiar with this. Now, you know the summer solstice, the sun is making its small circuit around the north, and it works its way back out into the fall, back out to the winter solstice, which is on its longer circuit. Okay, now, just in case you didn't understand what the portals meant, I'm going to explain it really, really quick. Now, here I have drawn a rough draft because I don't want to draw on my map. So let me explain this really, really quick. Okay, you have your North Pole here, and you have your South, which is the southern ice wall. Okay, now in the Book of Enoch, when it says that the sun goes from the second portal into the first portal into the second, and then from the second into the third, well, it's really, really simple. All the portals basically are, or what they stand for. You got to remember they're talking in ancient times. So in the winter, the sun starts to move in, which is coming into the spring. So month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, month 5, month 6. Half of the year, it goes from the winter into the spring, then into the summer. That's 6 months. It takes it 6 months to get to its inner circuit. Okay, and then when you hear it reversed in the Book of Enoch, when it says then the sun has made its circuit, and it goes from portal 6 back to portal 5, and then from portal 5 back to portal 4, and then the nights get longer. The nights start getting longer because the sun is moving back out in its circuit. It's going back out to its winter solstice. So therefore, when it says portals, it sounds like it's going backwards when it says that, when it says it goes from the 6th portal back to the 5th portal, and then back from the 5th portal to the 4th portal. So it's really, really simple. I just wanted to explain that to you guys in case you didn't understand what the portals meant. And the 30 days, you got to remember a month. Most months are 30 days, 31 days, depending on which month you're speaking of. So it takes 6 months going in and 6 months coming back out. So 6 months to go from portal 1 to portal 6, then another 6 months to get from portal 6 back to portal 1. So what they've ingeniously done is took this whole flat Earth map, and they took it and they turned the whole thing into a ball. Now, what happens if I take this map right here? If I take this whole map and I just fold the paper up into a ball, well, guess what? This ice ring becomes a white continent on the other side of this piece of paper. That's what they ingeniously done. They're not stupid. They're smart. They know exactly what they're doing. They're manipulating you. And it's really, really, really simple. Thanks for watching once again, and God bless.
So how is that explained? If you're looking at it as flat Earth,
Yeah.
my brain isn't getting it.
So what they've done is the world is flat, but they've kind of given us these images of these balls, like this globes, right? And all they've done is they've taken this flat Earth, the way it sits, and they've changed the shape into a globe. And so instead of the sun floating above us in a circle, they say the sun is way to the outside, kind of you know, now, they used to say that we were, the sun was revolving around us, but they've just changed the physics so that the Earth revolves around the sun now, right? Einstein, the theory of relativity, right? What they found out is that the Earth does not move. The Earth literally does not move. They've done experiments. The Earth does not move. But what they've said is, well, the Earth is moving in relation to the sun, or the sun is moving in relation to the Earth. So you can actually manipulate the physics to kind of make it that the Earth is moving, but it's actually everything else that's moving. Um, so it's kind of he tried to show it as that, the flat Earth turning to a ball, how they kind of moved into a ball. That's kind of what they've done is they've just changed the physics to make it seem that we're on a ball Earth. That's kind of what he's trying to imply. And then that's what he is telling people. He's telling the people the truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. We'll move on here. All right, so starting with chapter 72 here. And again, a lot of these are just going to be parts of each chapter. I didn't want to have you have to listen to the whole technical kind of stuff. I'll briefly summarize those, and I'll announce which verses we're summarizing as we go along.
The Book of the Courses of the Heavenly Luminaries. The Sun. Chapter 72. The Book of the Courses of the Luminaries of the Heaven. The relations of each according to their classes, their dominion, and their seasons, according to their names and places of origin, and according to their months, which Uriel, the holy angel who was with me, who is their guide, showed me. And he showed me all their laws, exactly as they are, and how it is with regard to all the years of the world, and unto eternity, till the new creation is accomplished, which dureth till eternity. And this is the first law of the luminaries. The luminary, the sun, has its rising in the eastern portals of the heaven, and its setting in the western portals of the heaven. And I saw 6 portals in which the sun rises, and 6 portals in which the sun sets, and the moon rises and sets in these portals, and the leaders of the stars, and those whom they lead. 6 in the east, and 6 in the west, all following each other in accurately corresponding order. Also many windows to the right and left of these portals. And first there goes forth the great luminary, named the sun, and his circumference is like the circumference of the heaven, and he is quite filled with illuminating and heating fire. The chariot on which he ascends, the wind drives, and the sun goes down from the heaven and returns through the north in order to reach the east, and is so guided that he comes to the appropriate portal and shines in the face of the heaven. In this way he rises in the first month in the great portal, which is the 4th of those 6 portals in the east. And in that 4th portal from which the sun rises in the first month are 12 window openings, from which proceed a flame when they're opened in their season. When the sun rises in the heaven, he comes forth through that 4th portal 30 mornings in succession, and sets accurately in the 4th portal in the west of the heaven. And during this period, the day becomes daily longer, and the night nightly shorter to the 30th morning. On that day, the day is longer than the night by a 9th part, and the day amounts exactly to 10 parts, and the night to 8 parts.
All right, so let's just go over that here. So Genesis chapter 1, and God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, which is the sun, and the lesser light to rule the night, which is the moon. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So unlike what so-called science tells us, the sun and stars are not gas giants millions and billions of miles away, but they're actually very local and they're created by God for very specific purposes. We get into more on this in those earlier studies I was mentioning. So anyone who kind of finds this all new, you can always get caught up there. But you know the sun is nearby. You can feel it. You can feel if something gets in the way, like of the sun, like a cloud, all of a sudden you feel it cool, right? And that's a local effect. That's not something from millions or billions of miles away. Now, the one thing to really understand here, and this is the concept that again is hard to sort of totally grasp, but these things are celestial beings. They're celestial, and you'll actually see often in the Bible they have pronouns, they have names. They have features. They're talked about being obedient and this kind of thing. So these celestial beings, they're stars, they're angels, and they're in our skies, and we see them as lights. And it's kind of just really hard to sort of grasp that concept that it can be an angel and a star at the same time. But that's kind of what we're seeing here. And so once we sort of can really grasp that concept, we can get a better understanding of what the book of Enoch is telling us and how things work or how things really work. Now, these celestial beings, one of them, the archangel Uriel, comes to tell Enoch of their ways. 1 Corinthians, all flesh is not the same flesh, but there is one kind of flesh of men, another flesh of beasts, another of fishes, and another of birds. There are also celestial bodies and bodies terrestrial. But the glory of the celestial is one, and the glory of the terrestrial is another. There is one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars. For one star differeth from another star in glory. And so what he's saying is all these things are their own individuals, their own bodies, but they're different. And so they're different types of things or different things to understand. Verse 1. Now, just like ants would not understand the ways of humans, so it is with us, not quite understanding the ways of the luminaries or stars. Uriel describes them as following exact courses, maintaining their relations, for example, constellations, having their dominions and seasons, coming out at their proper time, and having specific names and origins, very fitting with our previous discussions of stars as angels. So you see these things, following their courses on a day-to-day basis, just doing the same thing over and over and over. And it's kind of hard to grasp that a being would do that. But when you start to understand that these are different beings, you can understand how they would just do what they're supposed to do in that perfect will of God, what God wants them to do. And so these things are having their orders. For a star, for example, has an order to just kind of go around and around and around. And we might not get that, but that's just the way it is. And so we just have to accept it. So this is just an example here. So in these star trails, so you can actually follow these stars over the night sky and take this time-lapse photography. And what you'll find when you do this is you'll see a central star, Polaris, and you'll see all the other stars rotate in perfect circles around Polaris. Now, here's one thing to consider is if the world is like science tells us, we should not see this. These things should be all over, the line should be all over the place. We wouldn't have these same concentric circles year after year after year in the same place if we were living in a system described by science, right? We know we live under a dome, we live under a firmament. These stars are embedded in the firmament and they follow their courses on a regular basis. They just go in these concentric circles. So time-lapse photography of stars shows them following a perfect course around the North Star. And again, this is just further confirmation of biblical cosmology versus public edumacation. I call it edumacation because it's the education makes you more dumb. There's a biblical truth, and then there's an education that goes against that and is kind of dumbing down the masses. Now, we might not understand it, but picture angels moving in their prescribed procession in the sky in perfect obedience to God's order. So you can kind of simulate something that's on the earth. You can have one person in the center, people moving concentric circles around them in perfect timing, perfect order. It might be hard to grasp that concept, but that's essentially what's happening, is these things are being told to move in their proper order. Now, as a side note, recall that the word planets or planetes in Greek, which means wandering stars, do not follow their prescribed order. So they're described as not following their prescribed order and are associated with false gods, ones that pursue their own worship. So in the ancient world, before telescopes, there were these 7 visible celestial bodies in the sky. So these are some things you can see with the eye. And each of them are actually representative of false gods, things that kind of seek their own worship. You got the Sunday, the sun's day, Monday, the moon's day. Interestingly, Catholics worship the sun, Muslims worship the moon. Tuesday is called Tears Day or Thursday. Tears Day. And Tyr is the Norse god of war and is associated with Mars, which is the Roman god of war. Wednesday is Odin's Day. And it's basically the Romans' interpretation of the Germanic Mercury. In French, Wednesday is actually called Mercredi, which is close to Mercury. Thursday is Thor's Day, and it's associated with Thor and Zeus being the Norse and Greek gods of thunder and lightning, and it's the Roman version of Zeus. Friday is called Frigga's Day, a Norse goddess associated with Venus, which is the Roman goddess of love. Saturday is Saturn's Day, and it's actually close association with the Jewish religion, actually. We have these celestial bodies named after gods, and they're called wandering stars because they just follow their own order. They don't render worship to God. They wanted to claim their own worship as God. And the Romans did worship these planets as gods or as their symbols. A couple other things. Later in the study, we're going to see Uriel describing to Enoch God's perfect 364-day calendar, which is difficult to reconcile with our modern 365.2422-day calendar. Now, either there's possibly some deception with the number, and is it actually that many days? Hard to say, right? It seems like that is accurate. Or possibly, in Enoch's time, it was indeed 364 days. And because of the luminaries, particularly the sun, no longer following its prescribed order, the length of a year had changed at some point. So we hear about these fallen angels. It's quite possible when they fell, and then after the flood, the days of the season changed. So a day went from 364 days, which was in Enoch's time, to this new number. So that's hard to say, but that's a theory. Now, this notion of celestial bodies being obedient or disobedient to God's order will be important later on. So just kind of take note of this whole idea of obedience, disobedience with the stars, following their trails, not following their trails. And it has implication for how people are. Getting back to the main study here. So what Uriel describes to Enoch here is God's perfect order, how the courses of luminaries were supposed to be unto eternity. That's in the text there. Now, recall that the Greek word aionios, which is often interpreted as eternity wrongly, is better rendered as age during. We talked about this many times in previous studies, but age during is the better interpretation of that word. In Hebrew, olam, it's kind of to the horizon and beyond. So to as far as we can possibly see is kind of the concept there. And it makes sense for how it's used here. So you'll see here that wording, how it is with regard to all the years of the world and unto eternity till the new creation. Well, how can it be forever if till the new creation, that means there's a time frame on it, there's a set end till the new creation. And so that's kind of why this aionios, you should understand that as age during. It doesn't mean forever, as it's often interpreted in the Bible. The age of the new creation, though, is forever. So when they use it here, is accomplished with which dureth till eternity. That one you can take as eternity because that age of the new creation will be forever because Jesus is in it. And so because Jesus is in it, there's no end. And so that one you can actually consider as meaning forever in that particular situation. For a detailed understanding of aionios, you can see this website here, tentmaker.org. And they describe it. There's several articles there where they really delve into the word and how its proper use is supposed to be or was actually historically. Verse 3, Uriel describes 6 portals or circuits, as we said earlier, in the east, and 6 in the west, in which the sun rises and sets. So just kind of to recap here, there's 6 portals here in the east where the sun rises. And it says in the spring, it starts off here by the equinox, the 4th circuit, and kind of over 30 days makes its way to the 5th, over 30 days makes its way to the 6th, and then reverses order after that. So this is where it rises, and the sun kind of comes across like this, and then sets in the west, and then kind of makes its way around again and again and again for 30 days until it ends up into the next circuit. Now, for an observer, looking from north to south, so Jerusalem is actually north of the Tropic of Cancer. That's this one, Tropic of Cancer. So if you're looking south, you're going to see these 6 gates, kind of 6 in the east where they rise, where the sun rises, and you're going to see 6 in the west where the sun sets. And so basically what's happening from an observer's point of view is the sun will rise in the east, it'll come across the sky, and then it'll set in the west. And then it does that again on a daily basis, and this is kind of what you're seeing. And in the winter months, the sun will be here, and in the summer months, it'll be here, a higher path in the sky. So basically, the sun's path in the sky varies by month. In the summer, when the sun is closer in the 6th portal, its path is going to be higher in the sky. And in the winter, when the sun is further, so in the winter, the sun's way out here. And if you're an observer, like let's say here in Jerusalem, you know, in the summer, you'll see it right above you. But in the winter, the sun will be further away. It'll look like here. And you can see this in our sky. So in the sky, you can see that in the winter, the sun kind of hangs lower. And in the summer, the sun is higher in the sky. Now, the truth of the sun rising and setting as it moves over the motionless earth was simply intuitive to the ancients. So the ancients knew that, okay, the sun rises, it's above us, we're on the flat earth, stationary earth that's not moving, and this thing is coming above us. The notion of earth moving when we are clearly not and rotating towards the sun, all this is all counterintuitive, that has to be taught. If you remember, I showed you this picture here. This is a CIA director, William Casey, 1981. We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. So they've taught lies like evolution, the universe, moon landing, all this kind of stuff. They're really trying to get people away from belief in the creator, trusting what the creator's word says. Mystery Babylon, which this guy is part of, their whole goal is to really distance people from the creator, to make them seem as insignificant, as unimportant as possible, when everything that we do is so important to God, what we believe, you know, how much we want to have a relationship with him. This is all very, very important to God. But what these Mystery Babylon people do is they make it so it seems we're not significant. And a lot of people we see fall victim to that because they have very low self-esteem. They don't really know that they're loved by God. They feel meaningless, and so they live their life as if it's meaningless. And again, God wants us to love. He wants us to trust. These are things that he wants. And this is like a father's love for the child. They want the child to grow into him and to understand, know him, have a relationship with him. And so Mystery Babylon just tries to do the opposite and just kind of distance us as far from God as possible. All right. So verse 4 here. According to biblical cosmology, the sun is about 32 miles, 51 kilometers in diameter, and about 3,000 miles or 4,800 kilometers above the earth. If its area is similar to heaven, which it says here in the text, then the heavenly Jerusalem, which I believe this is referring to when they talk about, where's that, verse 4? Sorry, I think it might have been the one just before. Oh, okay. It just says its circumference is like the heaven. Oh, here it is like the circumference of the heaven. So the heavenly Jerusalem. And so that would make the heavenly Jerusalem about a medium-sized US city, or about 2,000 square miles based on these numbers here. There's some math in there, but that's basically what it equates to. Now, if you can imagine, you know, obviously these cities in the US have roads and all that. Heavenly Jerusalem wouldn't have those kind of things other than just paved roads that you can walk on. But they're not full of like highways and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what this would imply. Verse 5 to 6. note the use of the word he here as they describe the sun, and he is quite filled with illuminating and heating fire. So as previously discussed, the word luminary can be used to refer to either stars or angels. Enoch describes the luminary as riding on a chariot driven by the wind. So it's anthropomorphizing these things, meaning giving it like features of men or individuals. So again, more like an angel than a star in that case. Now, and this description of the sun riding on a chariot is very similar to what the ancient descriptions of the Greek god Apollo were like. And so you sort of get this concept of these luminaries, these fallen angels coming to earth and taking on certain roles on the earth and becoming gods. And there was a time during the Greeks where these things were worshipped, these planets were worshipped. And when you sort of get into a lot of the details of their history, you'll see them having these shrines and paying worship to these Roman gods, these Greek gods. And when we talked about this in our previous studies, we'll see that these fallen angels, or maybe even the Nephilim, were what they were worshiping. They talk here about the sun rising in the first month in the great portal. So in the first month, it rises in that fourth portal. Now, their first month is actually Aviv, which is, March on our calendar. So we call it the third month, but they call it the first month. And that's when the sun starts in the fourth portal. Now, just to get an idea how much our calendars have been manipulated, if you actually consider the months of the year, we have the month September, which is actually sept means 7. October, octo means 8. November, non means 9. December means 10. But what they actually represent are the 7th month. September represents the 9th month of the year. How does that make sense? October, the 8th month, octo 8, is actually the 10th month of our year. November is the 11th month when it should be the 9th. And December should be the 10th month of the year, but it's actually the 12th. And so there's been some manipulation. They talk about, Antichrist, Mystery Babylon, manipulating the times and seasons. And so they've actually changed what we call our months and years. They've moved them. They've moved them around. And again, this is all just to create confusion. Verse 7 to 10. As discussed previously, over the next 30 days, it starts in the fourth portal here, and it goes around and around and around 30 days, all in that fourth portal. And then after 30 days, it's made its way into the fifth portal. And with each passing day, this is in the text, the day gets longer and the nights get shorter. And so for an observer, this is for an observer near Jerusalem. So looking at it from Jerusalem's point of view, which is where Enoch was roughly located. Now, from verse 10 to 31, the text does get repetitive, so I just want to summarize there. And the best way to summarize that is just a simple chart. And so the text just actually talks about each month. And so what you'll see is the months of spring, 1, 2, 3. And it's in the portals 4, 5, and 6 during those months. And then when it gets to summer and reaches the summer solstice, so that would be this one right here on the inside. When it gets to the summer, it actually starts reversing direction and goes outwards from portals 6 to 5 to 4 over the 4th, 5th, and 6th months. And then 7, 8, 9, that's fall, and that's kind of making its way from this portal here, the third portal to the second portal to the first portal. And at the end of the first portal, it's at the winter solstice, which is the furthest, and that's this one here. So winter solstice is this circle here. And then it makes its way back towards the inside again, and it goes along portals 1, 2, and 3 to do that. So you kind of just have this thing where it just keeps going in and out for 6 months, and then 6 months in the other direction, and that makes up a year. And that's what the sun is doing. Now, this other column here is about the daylight, and so they mentioned this in the text as well. And what you'll see is that the amount of daylight, they put it in 18ths for some reason. And so day and night are divided into 18 parts, and they never go beyond 6 or 12 parts in either direction. So the most light you'll have is 6 parts versus 12 parts night, or 12 parts light versus 12 parts day versus 6 parts night. And you'll see that for the different times during the spring and the fall equinox, we know this, the amount of daylight and night is the same. Whereas in the summer solstice, when the sun is at its peak there, the amount of daylight is 12 hours to 6, so 2-to-1 ratio. And then in the winter solstice, when the sun is at its furthest, it's a 2-to-1 ratio in the other direction. And again, just a side note of the text. Now, I should note that months 3, 6, and 9, so month 3, month 6, month 9, and month 12 are said to be 31 days long instead of 30. We'll get a bit more to that when we talk about the intercalary days. But basically, that gives 4 equal seasons of 91 days, which would make for a 364-day calendar. And this is the perfect calendar that Enoch describes. After 364 days, the sun returns to its starting point, which is the spring equinox. So again, just to recap, starts here in the 4th portal, 4, 5, 6, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then 1, 2, 3, and then it's back to where it started the year before. Let's just have the narrated part for verses 32 onwards here from chapter 72.
On that day, the night decreases and amounts to 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts. And the night is equal to the day, and the year is exactly as to its days, 364. And the length of the day and of the night, and the shortness of the day and of the night arise. Through the course of the sun, these distinctions are made. And so it comes that its course becomes daily longer, and its course nightly shorter. And this is the law, and the course of the sun, and his return as often as he returns, 60 times, and rises, the great luminary, which is named the sun, for ever and ever. And that which thus rises is the great luminary, and is so named according to its appearance, according as the Lord commanded. As he rises, so he sets, and decreases not, and rests not, but runs day and night. And his light is 7-fold brighter than that of the moon. But as regards size, they are both equal.
All right, so just to summarize there, verses 32 to 36. Enoch confirms the course of the sun as described by Uriel, and that it passes through each of the portals 60 times each year over the course of a year. So basically, each of the 6 portals it travels over twice, 30 days each time. Verse 37, this is a shocker. We were given some additional details about the sun, particularly that it's 7 times brighter than the moon. Okay, we can see that. But it's actually equal in size. But as regards to size, they are both equal. And so that might be a shocking detail, but it is actually what we observe. If you go look at the sun, especially if you put a little filter on it just to see the sun itself and not the glare, you'll see that, wow, the sun and the moon are actually indeed the same size. And this is opposed to what science tries to teach us. Here's just a quick summary of that.
You ever noticed that the sun and moon appear exactly the same size in the sky? Think about it. We're told the sun is 400 times larger than the moon, but also 400 times farther away, creating a perfect illusion where they look identical in size. But what are the odds of that? Is this just an incredible cosmic coincidence? Or is it evidence that we've been lied to about our world? According to mainstream science, the sun is 93 million miles away and a massive 865,000 miles in diameter, while the moon is only 2,159 miles wide and just 238,000 miles away. They claim that these 2 celestial bodies are so perfectly proportioned that they just happen to look the same size from Earth. But here's the problem. There is 0 scientific reason why this should happen. Why would we just happen to be positioned in the exact spot where this illusion works? And if the sun is really that gigantic and distant, why does it appear small and local in time-lapse videos and real-world observations? Even more suspicious, the moon and sun follow nearly identical paths in the sky, staying in close alignment throughout the year. If they were really different sizes and distances, their movement should be completely different. Instead, they behave as if they are part of the same localized system. Let's break this down with real-world evidence. Perfect eclipses. The only reason we can even have a total solar eclipse is because the sun and moon appear the same size. If their proportions were even slightly off, eclipses wouldn't be possible. Personal observations: watch the sun and moon rise and set. They move across the sky at similar speeds and stay the same apparent size all day. That wouldn't happen if one were 400 times bigger and farther away than the other. If the sun were really 93 million miles away, it should shift positions dramatically when viewed from different parts of Earth, but it doesn't. Instead, it behaves as if it's much closer. And here's something strange. Why do we never see the dark side of the moon? It's supposedly rotating, yet we always see the same face. Could it be that the moon is actually something entirely different than what we've been told? Try this experiment yourself. Cover a street light with your thumb, then walk away. As you move back, your thumb no longer covers the light. That's perspective. Now ask yourself, if the sun is 400 times bigger than the moon, how does the moon perfectly cover it during an eclipse? The math doesn't add up. The only logical explanation is that the sun and moon are much closer and smaller than we're told.
So again, that's just another thing of what's innately obvious. You can look at the sky, you can observe that they're the same. They look the same. They cover each other perfectly during an eclipse. Yet we are told that the sun is 400 times bigger and happens to be 400 times the distance from the moon. And that's why they make a perfect kind of covering, is that they just kind of overlap each other. Again, this is edumacation. This is them trying to educate us to believe a lie versus what the simple, obvious truth is.
You ever noticed?
So we'll move on to chapter 73 here, and they deal with the moon here.
Chapter 73. And after this law I saw another law dealing with the smaller luminary, which is named the moon. And her circumference is like the circumference of the heaven, and her chariot in which she rides is driven by the wind, and light is given to her in definite measure. And her rising and setting change every month, and her days are like the days of the sun. And when her light is uniform, full, it amounts to the 7th part of the light of the sun. And thus she rises, and her first phase in the east comes forth on the 30th morning, and on that day she becomes visible, and constitutes for you the first phase of the moon on the 30th day, together with the sun in the portal where the sun rises. And the 1/2 of her goes forth by a 7th part, and her whole circumference is empty without light, with the exception of 1/7 part of it, and the 14th part of her light.
All right, so again, I cut that off early because we'll get into some of the technicalities as a quick summary later. So Genesis chapter 1, again, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven, and let them be for lights to the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. So the moon is, so in the text here it says, I saw another law dealing with the smaller luminary. That should be lesser luminary. It is just the lesser of the 2 lights. It's not smaller, just like they just said. Now, like the sun, the moon's circumference is also like heaven. So if it's also like heaven, like the sun's circumference is like heaven, then that means they're the same size. So that's just kind of a wrong use of that word there. Now, the moon is also described to ride a chariot driven by the wind and also rises and sets. Just note that the sun is called he and the moon is often referred to as her. Now, when the moon's light is full, it is 1/7 brightness of the sun, i.e. the sun is 7 times brighter than the full moon. Verses 4 to 8, a new moon is invisible and appears on the 30th solar day. So this new moon, which doesn't have any light on it, appears on the 30th solar day in the same portal where the sun rises. In that video comparing the sun and the moon, they're saying that the sun and moon kind of seem to track along the same pathway. And then again, that's consistent with biblical cosmology and is completely not viable in science's explanation of how the sun and moon move. Now, the moon here in the text is divided into 2 halves of 7 parts each, so i.e. 14 parts total. And this is just combining some information from chapter 78, but we'll actually see that it receives a sliver of light initially. So on that 30th day, it'll receive a sliver of light and then becomes a full 14th of light on night 2. We'll get into this a bit more detail, what that means, but basically it goes from building up this light. And some people describe the moon more like a battery. It actually absorbs light from the sun being in close proximity to it, and it actually lights up from the sun. It's just kind of lighting up, and the sun is kind of helping it do that. Now, once it starts kind of filling up, it actually increases by 1/14 every night. So actually after 14 nights, you'll see that it should become a full moon if you're adding 1/14 of the light every day. I'm just summarizing the rest of chapter 74 here. So the moon takes about 15 days to become full. Day 1, it gets that sliver. And then you get 7 days before it becomes a half moon, and about 7 days for the other half of the moon to light up. Verses 4 to 10. The thing with the moon movement, it's a little bit different than the sun. So it doesn't actually follow the portals in sequence like the sun does, but it actually has its own peculiar course. Sometimes staying in the same circuit as the sun, but sometimes it actually deviates and moves into other circuits, and then returning in others for 7 to 8 days at a time. So the sun could be following in 30 days around one circuit. The moon will kind of go off that circuit for a little bit, come back on a different circuit. So the moon just has a little bit more peculiar movement, but it is kind of following the same path. Now, verses 10 to 12. Because Enoch's sun-based calendar is 364 days and the moon cycle is 29.5 days, what'll happen is that the moon will fall behind 10 days each year. So a full 12 full moon cycles is 354 days, whereas 12 full sun cycles plus the intercalary days is 364 days. So you'll see that it'll get 10 days behind every year. And in 3 years, that would lead to a 30-day difference, which coincidentally is the time for another solar month. So you can actually add a month in there. The Book of Enoch doesn't state this specifically, but it's just saying that after 3 years, you'll have a 30-day being behind. And technically, you can throw in a 30-day month in there, and that'll just keep the calendar from falling behind. The Hebrews, they use something called a lunisolar calendar. It's a 360-day calendar instead of 364. And in their calendar, what they do is they just plug in an extra month whenever things get behind. And this way you keep the seasons at the right time. Because if you kept falling a month behind every year, what'll happen is the seasons would change. They would no longer match the months of the year. And so what you got to do is you got to throw in a month in there every once in a while, just so the seasons keep matching the proper month of the year.
Chapter 75. And the leaders of the heads of the thousands, who are placed over the whole creation and over all the stars, have also to do with the 4 intercalary days, being inseparable from their office, according to the reckoning of the year. And these render service on the 4 days which are not reckoned in the reckoning of the year. And owing to them, men go wrong therein. For those luminaries truly render service on the world stations, one in the first portal, one in the third portal of the heaven, one in the fourth portal, and one in the sixth portal. And the exactness of the year is accomplished through its separate 364 stations. For the signs, and the times, and the years, and the days the angel Uriel showed to me, whom the Lord of glory hath set forever over all the luminaries of the heaven, in the heaven and in the world, that they should rule on the face of the heaven, and be seen on the earth, and be leaders for the day and the night, the sun, moon, stars, and all the ministering creatures which make their revolution in all the chariots of the heaven. In like manner, 12 doors Uriel showed me, open in the circumference of the sun's chariot in the heaven, through which the rays of the sun break forth, and from them is warmth diffused over the earth, when they are opened at their appointed seasons. And for the winds and the spirit of the dew, when they are opened, standing open in the heavens at the ends. As for the 12 portals in the heaven, at the ends of the earth, out of which go forth the sun, moon, and stars, and all the works of heaven in the east and in the west. There be many windows open to the left and right of them, and one window at its appointed season produces warmth, corresponding, as these do, to those doors from which the stars come forth, according as he has commanded them, and wherein they set, corresponding to their number. And I saw chariots in the heaven, running in the world above those portals in which revolve the stars that never set. And one is larger than all the rest, and it is that makes its course through the entire world.
All right, so chapter 75 starts talking about the stars. So we are introduced to the next set of luminaries, four in particular, which are the heads over thousands, over all of creation, and over all the other stars and luminaries. These are associated with the intercalary days of Enoch's 364-day calendar. So again, they're talking about these days, these intercalary days, as being stars and as being heads over all the other stars. And so God kind of has a system of, I think it's Exodus 17, I believe, that talks about this, where Moses' father-in-law Jethro comes to visit him, and he has Moses say, "Why are you talking to each and every single person? Why don't you assign people that you trust over heads of 50, over heads of tens? Delegate, right?" And so God has such a similar system where there's this authority, and there's this, one set is kind of over a larger set, which is over a larger set. And that's kind of what they're talking about here, is these four leaders are over all the other stars of creation. Oops, sorry. So yeah, this is Enoch's 364-day calendar. You can see these months of 30. So there's 12 months of 30, plus these four intercalary days in between each season. And so that equals a total of 364 days. Now, these four leaders or luminaries are said to come in and render service on the earth in their proper time and season. So basically, day one, the first intercalary day or star comes in and renders its role, and that kind of comes in during the spring equinox. The next one comes in at the summer solstice. The next one comes at the fall equinox, day 183. And the last one comes in day 274, which is the winter solstice. So these things come in and they kind of render service. And when we look at the stars in the night sky, you see constellations. And what they're talking about is that as these things come into their season, into their time, they're kind of said to be over the earth at that time and in charge. And again, that might be hard to grasp, but basically the intercalary leader or star comes in and it's considered to be in charge for the next 3 months. And it has stars for each month under it, and there's stars for each day under them. And so there's 364 days that are in charge of the whole year, one for each day of the year. Again, it might be hard to grasp, but that's what Enoch is talking about here. Now, verses 3 to 4, these luminaries, along with all the other lights of heaven, give light to the earth. So that's part of their service. So both in the physical sense, they give light, but also in the spiritual sense, they give light. Light often represents truth and guidance. This part here where they talk about these two great lights, one light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. So they're considered to be over the earth the time that they are ruling. He made the stars also that have their own individual rule. In the Bible, they talk about powers, principalities. We kind of talked about that one study, how there's these different things that are over certain parts of the earth. They talk about the book of Daniel, the prince of Persia, the prince of Grecia. Again, these things have their own dominion and authority. And that's kind of what these stars are. They have a dominion or authority over a certain time frame or certain area of the earth. Just kind of think of God as having these stars underneath him that he just delegates authority to. Now, verse 4 to 5, the sun is described again as in a chariot, and through its doors the sun's rays break forth and warm the earth. Verses 6 to 8, along the portals that the sun, so those portals that we showed you there earlier, along those portals, there's actually many windows to the left and right of those portals, which provide further function. For example, warmth that they describe here in the chapter, corresponding to their appointed season as God has commanded them. So again, these other stars come in and they also have a function. Verses 8 to 9. Now above those ones, so above the portals where the sun and moon travel, Enoch sees more chariots carrying the stars that never set. So there's stars that you're always going to see. They're always going to be in the night sky. For example, Polaris would be one. Polaris doesn't rise or set. You'll always see it. During the day, the blue of the sky covers it up, but as soon as the blue of the sky kind of goes away, you can see Polaris still there. It hasn't risen or set. And these are what they call circumpolar stars, so they're always visible. This is kind of like just a diagrammatic representation. So you see the sun and moon kind of following its portals. And then in the upper sky, there's some constellations or individual stars that would never really set. You'll be able to see them from anywhere on Earth. They're kind of always there. And that's kind of what Enoch is referring to about these stars that are above where the sun and the moon are. And so those can be seen in the night sky. All right, now this is the next chapter, talking about the 12 windows and their portals. I believe this is talking about the winds.
The 12 windows and their portals. Chapter 76. And at the ends of the earth I saw 12 portals, open to all the quarters of the heaven, from which the winds go forth, and blow over the earth. 3 of them are open on the face, the east of the heavens, and 3 in the west, and 3 on the right, the south of the heaven, and 3 on the left, the north. And the 3 first are those of the east, and the 3 are of the north, and 3 after those on the left of the south, and 3 of the west. Through 4 of these come winds of blessing and prosperity, and from those 8 come hurtful winds. When they are sent, they bring destruction on all the earth, and on the water upon it, and on all who dwell thereon, and on everything which is in the water, and on the land.
So again, if you see the patterns of the winds, you can see there's these kind of 6 tracts. Actually, if you visualize this on a ball earth, right, you'll see that there's 6 kind of peculiar ways the winds travel. And on a flat earth, you would sort of see the system similar to the sun and moon's portals. You would just see the winds there instead moving along those portals. Again, this is kind of that manipulation of how they turn a flat earth into a ball earth. Now, Enoch sees these 12 portals or circuits for the winds as well, which traverse through all quarters of the earth. So these portals, just like the sun's portals, these wind portals also go across the entire earth, all 4 quarters of the earth, if you divide the earth into 4 quarters. Now, 3 portals of circuits each originate from the east, west, left, which is north, and right, which is the south of heaven. So if we consider heaven straight up, where Polaris is, you would have these 4 sets of 3 windows each on the 4 different cardinal directions. Now, 4 of these 12 winds bring blessing and prosperity, while 8 are hurtful and bring destruction on the earth. Now, this is just a summary of the text. I didn't really want to, this is just a quick summary to summarize what it's saying. So basically, you have your 3 portals or circuits coming from each of the 4 cardinal directions. So for example, let's just start with the east winds. In the text, they describe 3 portals. So 3 portals are in the east, start in the east. The northernmost of the portals, so the legend here is that the NMS, N is the portal that's furthest north, S would be the portal that's furthest south. When we get to the north and south winds, there's portals that are inclined to the east and inclined to the south, and then there's the middle portal. The general theme is that the middle portal is the one that brings blessings, whereas the portals that are on either side of it are the ones that bring hurtful things. So if you can imagine, let's just say a southern portal here, a middle portal here, and a northern portal here. And the way to think of it is the start of a one of those circuits or portals. You got the south winds. Again, there's an easternmost, a middle one, and a western one. And again, the general theme is the ones on the outside can be more hurtful. The ones in the middle bring good stuff. North winds, same principle there. And you would picture these north winds on being the other side of this dome. So they'd kind of be on the back surface here. And then the west winds would be on this side here. So 1, 2, 3. And again, same themes there. Now, verse 1 to 3, Enoch describes the 4 quarters of the earth and their significance. So he says the east is the first, it's the origin, it's kind of where things start. And you can kind of see that's where the Middle East is. South is where the Most High will descend. West is called the diminished because that's where the luminaries of heaven go down. That's where they set. The north, he says, is divided into three parts. The north you can consider more like the center here. And it has a place for the dwelling of man. It has a place for the seas, abysses, forests, rivers, darkness, and clouds. And it's also the place of the garden of righteousness. Verses 4 to 8. Enoch then goes on to describe the geography of the earth at that time. I didn't really want to get into this too much because it would really have no concept of it being changed by the flood. This would be unrecognizable to us now. But as they describe in the text, it included 7 great mountains, 7 great rivers, a great sea, something called the Erythraean Sea, 7 great islands. After the flood, those wouldn't be really recognizable anymore. Summary of chapter 78, verses 1 to 8. The sun is given a couple of additional names. The moon has 4 additional names, possibly related to its phases. Verse 4, again, the sun and moon are said to have similar circumferences. It is said that the sun transfers light to the moon. So this is what I was talking about, the moon acting like a battery. The moonlight is not reflected sunlight. We've talked about this before, but sunlight and moonlight are very different. If moonlight was just reflected sunlight, it would have the same features of sunlight, but it doesn't. It actually has completely different features. For example, sunlight is golden and warm. The moon's light is silvery and cold. The sun's light can be drying, whereas the moon's light is damp. Sun shade cools. So when you're in the shade from the sun, it actually cools. But when you're actually in the shade from the moon, it actually heats. So they've done experiments and they found that it's actually warmer in moon shade than being exposed to the moon. The sun's light is purifying and antiseptic, and the moon's light is actually petrifying, decaying, and septic. It causes illness, disease, whereas the sunlight is cleansing. So the moon is its own light. And just like God said, God created 2 lights in the sky. He didn't create one light and another light that reflects that light. He didn't say that. He says 2 different lights in the sky, and they are 2 different lights. Verse 4 to 8. The text recaps chapter 73, where a new moon becomes a full moon over 15 days. And verses 8 to 13 of chapter 78, verses 8 to 10. Similar to how the moon waxes over 15 days. So we talked about how you get a sliver of light here. You get your 1/14th light, and each day 1/14th is added until you get a full moon. And then it does the reverse afterwards, where it starts losing 1/14th of its light every day until you get a brand new moon. 6 of the lunar months are described as 30 days, and the other 6 are 29 days. And that's why you get an average lunar cycle of 29.5 days. Now, in Hebrew custom, the first sliver of light from a new moon signals a new month. So this will actually occur either on the 30th day, meaning a 29-day month, or the day after, meaning a 30-day month. Just quick explanation here. So on this 29th day, you can see that's kind of a new moon. And then what they do is on the 30th day, like we talked about earlier, they look for that first sliver of light. Now, half the time, they will not see that sliver of light. Half the time, they will. If they see the sliver of light, that becomes a new month. That's the start of the next month. And then you're left with a 29-day month from the month before. If they don't see the sliver of light, then they wait the next night, and they will definitely see the sliver of light that night. But what happens is now you're left with a 30-day month. And that's kind of the Hebrew custom. 30-day month from the month before. So it's all retroactive. You have to wait to see that sliver of light to see if you're going to have had a 29 or a 30-day month. Now, this is important because keep in mind Matthew 24:36, but of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. So this is the day of the Lord, Jesus' return they're talking about here. And Jesus is said to return on the Feast of Trumpets. So Jesus' second coming is thought to occur on the Day of Trumpets, the first day of the 7th month, of which men will not know the day or the hour. So this was actually a Hebrew idiom. This is like the sayings, like leading a horse to water or finding a needle in a haystack. They had a saying, no man will know the day or the hour. And it's a reference to when the Feast of Trumpets is to occur. So what would happen is on the 30th day of the 6th month, watchmen would wait for the first sliver of light, which could come at any hour. And if it did, that day would be declared the first day of the 7th month, or the day of trumpets. And if no sliver of light appeared, then they'd wait the next day, and they'd have to wait hour by hour by hour until they saw that first sliver of light to declare it to be the day of trumpets. So again, no man shall know the day or the hour, and that's kind of what that's referring to. So his return is supposed to be on the day of trumpets. Chapter 79, quick summary of that chapter. So verses 1 to 3, Uriel has now shown Enoch all the laws of the luminaries, stars of heaven. So everything we just talked about, Uriel said he's shown Enoch. And there's a very specific timing and order prescribed. So these stars of heaven are supposed to follow their perfect timing. So the perfect timing on the calendar, the perfect timing in the sky, where they're positioned. Verse 4 to 6, the chapter ends with a description of the waning moon entering the 6th portal. And again, recapping how it falls behind 5 days for every 6-month period. Okay, chapter 80. Now, this is where they start talking about these luminaries and how they relate to men on earth, children of men.
Chapter 80. And in those days the angel Uriel answered and said to me, Behold, I have shown thee everything, Enoch, and I have revealed everything to thee that thou shouldst see this sun and this moon, and the leaders of the stars of the heaven, and all those who turn them, their tasks and times and departures. Perversion of nature and the heavenly bodies, owing to the sin of man. And in the days of the sinners the years shall be shortened, and their seed shall be tardy on their lands and fields, and all things on the earth shall alter, and shall not appear in their time. And the rain shall be kept back, and the heaven shall withhold it. And in those times the fruits of the earth shall be backward, and shall not grow in their time. And the fruits of the trees shall be withheld in their time. And the moon shall alter her order, and not appear at her time. And in those days the sun shall be seen, and he shall journey in the evening on the extremity of the great chariot in the west, and shall shine more brightly than accords with the order of light. And many chiefs of the stars shall transgress the order prescribed, and these shall alter their orbits and tasks, and not appear at the seasons prescribed to them. And the whole order of the stars shall be concealed from the sinners, and the thoughts of those on the earth shall err concerning them, and they shall be altered from all their ways. Yea, they shall err, and take them to be gods. And evil shall be multiplied upon them, and punishment shall come upon them, so as to destroy all.
All right, so chapter 80, summary here. Note the contrast in this chapter between order and disorder. So the whole time, 72 to 79, we've been talking about this perfect order, stars following their course, the sun, the moon following its specific course. Everything has just been told to do things as they're commanded by God, as prescribed. Now, in this chapter, all of a sudden, they're talking about disorder. Everything's in disarray. Things are not appearing in their time. Seasons are not happening when they're supposed to be. The timing is completely off. So that's disorder. And so Uriel has just shown Enoch a version of the universe with its 364-day calendar, and the sun, the moon, and the stars, including all these leaders, all moving in God's perfect prescribed order. In contrast, there's a time coming called the days of the sinners. And during this time, so the years will be shortened. They talk about that there. Seed will be slow to grow. Things won't grow on their proper timing. All things on the earth will be altered. Heaven shall withhold the rain. Fruits will not grow. The moon will alter its order and not appear in her time. Verse 5 is a little bit tricky. There's alternate translations that are much more clear than this. Alternate translations of verse 5 speak of the barrenness of the sun. So instead of this kind of phrasing here, it actually says the sun will become barren. And they talk about heaven shining more brightly. You can go to this website here for the translations, but basically heaven shines more brightly is what that means. In the days of the sinners, stars will transgress the prescribed orders. They won't follow their proper course. They alter their orbits. They don't appear in their season. Whole orders of stars will no longer be visible. So they'll be concealed from the sinners, and men will mistakenly take them to be gods. And this is going to make sense in a second. Because of all this false worship to created beings rather than the creator, punishment comes upon men and leads to destruction. And that's that last part there. If this description of the days of sinners sounds like the end times, it should. So these events, they have not happened yet. The moon hasn't given less light, the sun hasn't become barren, the stars haven't disappeared, but this is what's going to happen in the end times. And this is a time when sinners will rule the earth. It's the days of the sinners. The sinners are going to be ruling. And we're kind of in that world today. If you look at the way that governments, heads of religion, heads of finance, the way they're behaving, these people are very ungodly. They're running the world in a way that's very opposite of what Jesus would have them do. We are very much very close to this days of the sinners, and it's kind of like a crescendo effect. So, it's always been happening throughout time, but it's getting to that kind of birthing pain kind of thing where things just get more intense and intense towards the end. There's been false worship of stars as gods. We talk about them in the Greek times, but they're actually going to say that this is going to be something that's very, very real. And when we talk about the end times, and like I said, we'll get to in a second, you'll see that the stars fall from the sky. And if you consider that these stars are celestial beings that have another form that can be worshipped as a god, that's what's going to happen. And so they talk about these 10 kings that are coming to the earth, and you'd have to wonder if 10 of those kings might be stars, might be planets, whatever, that people come to worship when they have a earthly visible form. Again, just big high level thinking, but it starts to make sense when you sort of consider how the world is operated. Nothing new is under the sun. All things are sort of leading to this pivotal moment in history when the days of the sinners will be much more obvious. And the things that Enoch is warning us about here, if we take those to heart and kind of understand, God has this perfect order, and then all of a sudden this complete disorder is appearing, we won't be taken, we won't be taken by surprise. We'll understand what's happening because we're going to be prepared for it. Let's look at some scripture just to solidify what I'm saying here. So kind of just take note of these different verses here again. I just want to sort of recap. So years being shortened, things slow to grow, heaven not giving its rain, fruits not growing, the moon altering its order, the sun becoming barren, stars disappearing from the sky, and false worship to these false gods. So just keep all those principles in mind as we study a few of these scriptures. And again, this is just constantly reinforced throughout the Bible. It's just amazing how Enoch puts it all together for us. And when we look at the Bible itself, the actual scriptures there, you'll see that, wow, these things are things Enoch warned us about. All right, so Matthew 24. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, i.e., things won't grow, pestilences, earthquakes in diverse places, so the earth will be changed. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor shall ever be. So it's a time that's coming. It's not here yet. And except those days should be shortened, so the days will be shortened, there should be no flesh be saved. There'll be destruction on the earth. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. The days will be shortened like they said in Enoch. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, the sun will be barren, moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven. So the stars will disappear. They won't follow their courses. They won't follow their orbits. They'll be down into the earth. The powers of the heavens shall be shaken. So they call these things powers and principalities. They'll be shaken like figs from a tree and fall to the earth. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. We talked about heaven shining, heaven kind of being brighter. And so when these things happen, those that are the Lord's will shine even brighter on the earth. Revelation chapter 6. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, again, the earth being altered, and the sun became black, barren, as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. The moon became darkened. It wasn't a bright color anymore. And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth. So again, the stars falling from the sky, being concealed, no longer being seen. Even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together. So people who have this worldview of this universe and these gas giants, their whole worldview is going to be shocked when they see this, when they see the heaven being rolled up like a scroll. Every mountain and island were moved out of their places, again, earth being altered. And the kings of the earth and the great men and the rich men and the chief captains and the mighty men and every bondman and every free man hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Again, a description of the day of the Lord. Joel chapter 2. And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. And also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my spirit. And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and the terrible day of the Lord come. So again, just more signs of the sun and moon changing. This is Revelation chapter 17. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Again, could these be fallen stars, fallen angels that give their power to the beast and that are worshipped like gods? Revelation 12:4. And his tail, Satan's tail, drew the third part of the stars of heaven. Remember how 1/3 of the angels follow Satan? This is kind of what this verse is referring to. So these stars, which are angels, they follow Satan. They get cast down to the earth. So these stars fall out of the sky down onto the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. We talked about this man-child. Some people think it's Jesus, but it's actually the church, the bride, that Jesus is preparing on the earth. And these are people that are full of his spirit. And that's what that is referring to. And again, you can see our Revelation 12:13 Bible study to better understand that. This is from the Epistle of Barnabas. So Barnabas was the same Barnabas that's from the Acts of the Apostles. He would travel with Paul, and he wrote an epistle. And there's a link to it there. I'd highly recommend reading it. It's full of really good information and really solidifies some of the teachings in the Bible the proper way. So again, there's a link there for that. But let's just read the Epistle of Barnabas here. Barnabas 4:3. The last offense is at hand, concerning which the scripture speaketh, as Enoch saith. For to this end the master hath cut the seasons and the days short, that his beloved might hasten and come to his inheritance. So everything we just talked about, this is what Barnabas is referring to. Again, note that he's defining Enoch as scripture, concerning which the scripture speaketh. So he's reading from the book of Enoch and calling it scripture. And Enoch has said that these are the days of the sinners. Barnabas 4:4. And the prophet also speaketh on this wise. 10 kings shall reign upon the earth, and after them shall arise another king, who shall bring low 3 of the kings under one. So they talk about in Revelation and Daniel about these 10 kings, and one king will subdue 3 others. Barnabas 4:5. In like manner Daniel speaketh concerning the same. And I saw the 4th beast to be wicked and strong and more intractable than all the beasts of the earth, and how there arose from him 10 horns, and from these a little horn, the Antichrist, and excrescence, and how that it abased under one 3 of the great horns, how it subdued 3 of the horns. So again, Barnabas is referring to these scriptures here, including Enoch. Chapter 81, almost done here.
The Heavenly Tablets and the Mission of Enoch. Chapter 81. And he said unto me, Observe, Enoch, these heavenly tablets, and read what is written thereon, and mark every individual fact. And I observed the heavenly tablets, and read everything which was written thereon, and understood everything, and read the book of all the deeds of mankind, and of all the children of flesh that shall be upon the earth, to the remotest generations. And forthwith I blessed the great Lord, the King of glory for ever, in that he has made all the works of the world. And I extolled the Lord because of his patience, and blessed him because of the children of men. And after that I said, Blessed is the man who dies in righteousness and goodness, concerning whom there is no book of unrighteousness written, and against whom no day of judgment shall be found. And those 7 holy ones brought me, and placed me on the earth before the door of my house, and said to me, Declare everything to thy son Methuselah, and show to all thy children that no flesh is righteous in the sight of the Lord, for he is their creator. 1 year we will leave thee with thy son, till thou givest thy last commands, that thou mayest teach thy children, and record it for them, and testify to all thy children. And in the 2nd year they shall take thee from their midst. Let thy heart be strong, for the good shall announce righteousness to the good. The righteous with the righteous shall rejoice, and shall offer congratulation to one another. But the sinners shall die with the sinners, and the apostate go down with the apostate. And those who practice righteousness shall die on account of the deeds of men, and be taken away on account of the doings of the godless. And in those days they ceased to speak to me, and I came to my people, blessing the Lord of the world.
All right. So verses 1 to 3, Uriel tells Enoch to observe, read, and understand the heavenly tablets he is seeing, which he does. He sees all the deeds of mankind up to the remotest generations, including ours. If you'll remember, Introduction to Enoch, chapter 1, the words of the blessings of Enoch, wherewith he blessed the elect and righteous, who will be living in the day of tribulation, when all the wicked and godless are to be removed. And he took up his parable and said, Enoch, a righteous man, whose eyes were opened by God, saw the vision of the Holy One in the heavens, which the angels showed me. And from them I heard everything, and from them I understood as I saw, but not for this generation, but for a remote one which is for to come. Concerning the elect, I said, and took up my parable concerning them. So everything the angels told Enoch to do, he opens his book, just saying what he was told to do, what he saw, and he writes his book. And so that's what where the book of Enoch comes from. And so we'll see shortly that this is Enoch's mission, to bring truth and understanding to the remotest of generations. This is why the book was kind of hidden for so long and then just revealed now, recently, in the last couple hundred years, to this remote generation. It had to be protected, it had to be preserved. And when you have it kind of out of the public's hands, it can't be altered, can't be changed. It stays the same. And it kind of gives us a little photograph or a little insight into what the world was like back then, what they believed. Remember our Enoch 1 Bible study where we talked about that game of telephone? So the people that are very close to the origin of the earth, that were right at the beginning, Adam, Seth, these people that were there from the very beginning, they would know the truth much more than the remotest of generations, because each step along the way, the truth gets altered. But because we have the book of Enoch, we sort of get a look back in time of what they believed then. They had this 364-day calendar. They had this perfect order. They had this beautiful, wonderful world. Those things reflect the truth of the creator existing. And nowadays we got the science, and it kind of tells us this, this, and that. And is it really closer to the truth, or are they actually making us further and further from the truth? So we might be puffed up in pride and believe that our science answers a lot of questions without realizing how much we're actually being deceived. And that's what science is doing. And this is why, in the book of Timothy, they say, O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science, falsely so called. Science, by definition, should be observation. It should be what we observe. But science today is not really observation. It's actually its own religion. You can call it scientism, where they get you to have these religious beliefs of a big bang and about gas giants and about dinosaurs. These are all religious beliefs. That's not observation. These things we haven't seen for ourselves. We're told certain things, we're told to believe certain things, but they're not observed. And that's why it's science falsely so called, because it's not actually observation. Which some professing have erred concerning the faith. Grace be with thee, amen. And so we're supposed to stay in truth. And again, Enoch is just one of those ways that God helps us to say in truth, especially for this most remote of generations, this generation that's right before the very end. If you were to take Enoch and believe everything as just complete truth, you would be protected against the lies of this world. Unfortunately, the lies of this world have overtaken many, and a lot of them are asleep and stuck in those lies, that some of them are really hard to wake up now. There's a saying I like, being deceived is like being asleep. You would never know it until you woke up. You know how sometimes when you wake up, you don't know that you were asleep. Okay. Verse 3. Enoch blesses God for making the world and mankind and praises him for his patience. Verse 4. Enoch declares that blessed is the man who dies in righteousness and goodness, because there is no book of unrighteousness written against him, and he will not experience a day of judgment. So we'll see shortly that this righteousness is not of work. So we'll get to that in a second. But verse 5 to 6, the 7 archangels, the 7 holy ones that have been accompanying Enoch throughout his travels, bring him back to his home on earth. So Enoch has had all these travels in heaven, seen many different things, and now the 7 archangels are bringing him back to his doorstep, basically. They tell him to declare everything to his son Methuselah. So Enoch is the father of Methuselah, who's the father of Lamech, who's the father of Noah. But Enoch is told to tell everything to Methuselah, and to let all his descendants know that no flesh is righteous before the Lord. He is their creator. He is sovereign. It is through his prescribed way of doing things that we will find righteousness through Christ. So nobody is righteous before God. He's the creator. He's sovereign. He can basically do what he wants. Nobody has any right to say that I'm righteous. But our righteousness is found in through obedience. And so this obedience comes through believing what God said he would do. He said he'd send us a savior, Jesus Christ, and to accept him. And that's all we would need to be declared righteous before God. Whosoever denieth the Son, the same hath not the Father. But he that acknowledgeth the Son hath the Father also. So this is how we receive the Father, is we receive the promise of his Son. There are certain people who will reject the Son, and when they reject the Son, they are rejecting the Father. There is no other way. This is the way God has prescribed it. This is the order that he's prescribed to believe in his Son. John 14:6, Jesus said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. So this is God's order. This is what God has prescribed to believe in his Son. And so when we look at the luminaries, you know, God has prescribed that they move how they're supposed to. And he's doing the same to us. He's saying, this is how I want you to move. I want you to move in having a relationship and a trust in my Son, who I sent you. All right, so Enoch is given 1 year to spend with the Son and to teach and record his testimony for men before he is taken up the year following, which would be his 365th year from Genesis. We know that. Verse 7, they tell Enoch, the angels tell Enoch to be strong, for the elect, and this is an alternate translation that has the word elect in there, shall announce righteousness to the elect, and they will all rejoice and congratulate one another. We've talked about that in previous studies. Verse 8, but the sinners will be separated. You know, there's Bible verses separating the sheep from the goats, the wheat from the tares. The sinners will be separated. So in one group will be the righteous, and they'll be separated from the sinners. And the sinners will die with the sinners, the godless with the godless. So they'll be grouped in one category. The others will group in the righteous elect will be grouped in another, and they'll be separated in that way. Verse 9 sounds kind of dire, but what it means is even though the righteous die on the account of the sinners and godless, verse 7 and 8 still hold true. So even though that righteous people will die at the hands and on the doings of sinners and the godless, know that things will still be okay. Know that God knows the righteous, he knows the elect, he knows who they are. So even if on this earth a righteous or elect die at the hands of sinners or godless, God still has you. He's going to put you in the right category. And so that's what verse 9 is saying, is that even though these things happen, where the righteous die on account of the sinners, verse 7 and 8 are still true. The sinners will be punished. The godless will be eventually punished. The righteous will remain righteous. We are to keep trusting God no matter what. Excuse me. Verse 10, the angels take their leave, and Enoch follows through with his assignment of teaching the people. Last chapter.
charge given to Enoch, the 4 intercalary days, the stars which lead the seasons and the months. Chapter 82. And now, my son, Methuselah, all these things I am recounting to thee, and writing down for thee. And I have revealed to thee everything, and given thee books concerning all these. So preserve, my son Methuselah, the books from thy father's hand, and see that thou deliver them to the generations of the world. I have given wisdom to thee and to thy children, and thy children that shall be to thee, that they may give it to their children for generations, this wisdom, namely, that passeth their thought. And those who understand it shall not sleep, but shall listen with the ear, that they may learn this wisdom. And it shall please those that eat thereof better than good food. Blessed are all the righteous. Blessed are all those who walk in the way of righteousness, and sin, not as the sinners, in the reckoning of all their days, in which the sun traverses the heaven, entering into and departing from the portals for 30 days, with the heads of thousands of the order of the stars, together with the 4 which are intercalated, which divide the 4 portions of the year, which lead them and enter them with 4 days. Owing to them men shall be at fault, and not reckon them in the whole reckoning of the year. Yea, men shall be at fault, and not recognize them accurately, for they belong to the reckoning of the year, and are truly recorded thereon forever, 1 in the 1st portal, and 1 in the 3rd, and 1 in the 4th, and 1 in the 6th, and the year is completed in 364 days. And the account thereof is accurate, and the recorded reckoning thereof exact. For the luminaries and months and festivals and years and days has Uriel shown and revealed to me, to whom the Lord of the whole creation of the world hath subjected the host of heaven.
All right, so chapter 82 summary. In our Book of Enoch chapter 1 study, scholars try to say that the book was written around 2nd century BC, but Enoch here directly contradicts them. Enoch here is saying that they were written in Methuselah's time, which is around the 30th century BC, and were to be delivered to the generations of the world. Enoch is giving heavenly wisdom to Methuselah, his children, and all their children for generations to come. So this is where the book of Enoch has its origins at this time. Now, people ask, well, how did the book survive the flood? Yeah, there's different ways to explain it, but basically, the whole tradition was oral tradition. They'd pass on these books, these teachings, these writings through oral tradition. They'd memorize it, and they'd teach their children, and they'd memorize it. And, that might seem difficult nowadays, but it was very commonplace then and easy to do. I think as our attention spans have shortened, it's kind of gotten harder and harder to do this. Now, verse 3, those who understand this wisdom will not slumber. They won't stay asleep, but they'll desire to learn it even more, and it will be more pleasing to them than good food. Verses 4 to 8, blessed are the righteous who walk in the way of righteousness. Enoch then just recaps the 364-day calendar again, and how the sun, the moon, and the stars follow God's perfectly prescribed order. So that's kind of the big theme here overall, is that God, for the luminaries and the seasons, has this perfectly prescribed order. And it's an example of how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to follow God's perfectly prescribed order as well. So just as the luminaries were meant to precisely follow God's prescribed order, so it is with the righteous and the elect. The rest of the chapter 82, verse 8 to 9, it is God who's over the whole creation, and he is the one who empowers all the luminaries to give light to men. Verses 10 to 20, the book ends by giving the angelic names of the leaders of the 4 intercalary days. So these 4 stars I was talking about earlier, they actually have names, Milkiel, Helamelech, Melejal, and Nerel. Anytime you see El there, that's referring to an angel. And they actually have names for the leaders of each of the 12 months. I didn't bother to put them down, but they each have a leader for each month. And the rest of the chapter also describes the blessings and signs each of these leaders bring. So we talked about how they render a service to the earth. And so the text there just talks about how each of them brings something to the earth. Generally, these are things that are typical of the season. Now, one thing to note in the R.H. Charles version that we use, it's actually missing the very last section, which talks about the fall and winter leaders. So you'll hear all about the spring and the summer leaders. But there are other manuscripts, particularly the Aramaic, that has those portions in it. So it is a full chapter. And that is the end of the study. And we'll just open it up for chat there.